And welcome. We are in 303 and we turn now back to Mr. Conrad's volume Unstoppable, lesson 48, page 168. Let's jot in our journals just a moment here a couple of the focus that we want to pay attention to. One, let's pay attention to this idea that commitment is more than just words. Commitment is actions. The other thing I like about this chapter is, of course, it really does raise the question, observation about the importance of friends and what a true friend is versus a fake friend or an average friend or a rainy day friend, right? Well, read together, George and Dave. George and Dave, lesson 48 again. George and Dave met in the 7th grade. Each of them had gone to different elementary schools, however, both boys were the same. They had similar interests, similar abilities, similar likes, dislikes. They even looked so much alike that they could have been brothers. Classmates sometimes even got them confused. When George and Dave were the first two chosen for their 7th grade basketball team, they developed a friendship that lasted throughout high school. People say if you graduate from high school with one true friend, you're lucky, because that one true friend will be there for you no matter what, through thick and thin, forever. Notice his observation about friends. One true friend will be there for you no matter what, through thick and thin, forever. George and Dave believed that to be true. Both of them knew that the other was that one true friend, and they were both good with that. Dave got a car his junior year, and almost every night he gave George a ride home after basketball practice. Dave drove miles out of his way to take George home. They both had fun on those rides home because Dave had an 8-track tape player. For those of you that don't know, before there were iPods, there were cassettes, and then before there were cassettes, there were these things called 8-track players. Okay, and good speakers in his car. George, ever so grateful, promised to someday give Dave a ride. A lot of them, too. After high school, George went to college, Dave went to work. Although they didn't see each other as much, their friendship never diminished. When they got together, they would frequently reminisce about that championship basketball game against their arch-rival Mount Penn. Dave fell down in the 3-second lane with the ball with no one to pass to and the ref about to blow the whistle. He threw the ball toward the basket. Swish! They went on to win the game by 2 points. George would laugh remembering that shot and tell Dave he was a better shot shooting from his knees. Dave would laugh too and nod his head in agreement. After George graduated from college, he started his own business. Dave was still working at the same place since high school. One day, George's mom, Dolores, showed up at her son's workplace. She was crying and she said she had some bad news. It was one of those moments George would never forget. Just like he would forever remember where he was and what he was doing when President Kennedy was shot, or when the New York Twin Towers came down during the 9/11 tragedy. George's mom told him that Dave was in a coma in critical condition. He was in a hospital in New Jersey. George immediately called the hospital. The phone rang several times and then a sobbing voice answered, "Hello." It was Dave's mom. She told George that Dave was diving into the ocean when he broke his neck. Some guy saw him floating out in the water. He swam out and pulled him to shore. Dave was unconscious. No one knew how long he'd been out there. Dave's mother told George that the doctor said if Dave lived, he would be paralyzed for life. She held the phone up to Dave's ear. She said maybe the sound of George's voice would pull him out of the coma. It was the first time George had ever talked to Dave without laughing. His voice cracking with emotion, George talked about all of the good times the two had shared growing up. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he reminded Dave he had fallen down before and made a good shot. George encouraged his buddy to take another shot now. He also remembered his promise to give Dave a ride if he ever needed one. He told his best friend that if he took another shot and made it, George would give him as many rides as he needed. If Dave needed a lift, George would lift him. George vowed to become Dave's legs because George truly believed that had the situation been reversed, Dave would have done the same for him. Unfortunately, Dave never got to see how committed George was. He died shortly after the phone call. George kept his word anyway. Within the next year, George married and moved thousands of miles away. As a tribute to his best friend, George walked or rode his bike to work every single day for 26 years. even on the coldest day, when the temperature was 61 degrees below zero, or when snow was about 2.5 feet deep. George never drove a vehicle to work in 26 years, no matter what the weather conditions, all because of a promise he'd made and the belief that your word is like a precious gem. George believed that someday he'd get it back when he and Dave met again in heaven. I know this story is true because even though most people know me as Craig, few people realize my first name is George. Dave was my best friend and teammate. I still think about Dave after all these years. I'm happy to say I never broke my word to him, and I can live with that. What I couldn't live with was hearing one of my students, Wacy Labs, breaking his word to his friend and teammate, Billy Ivy. It was in the fall of 2004, and it happened right in front of me in my classroom. I knew the story I'd tell that Friday would be 5 minutes of hell. And then finally, keeping your word is unstoppable. Let's pause for a moment and just jot down a couple of observations in our journals, if we could, please. First of all, I think it's important we say this out loud. If you say it, then do it. If you make promises. Let's ask this question. If you actually did that and you kept your promises, how would that change your life? That is to say, if you make promises, you keep them. If you break promises that you have made, then the only answer is to apologize. And as seniors, I would recommend that before you graduate, this be maybe one of the things that you decide to do as you consider graduation. Helping others through, finally on observation, helping others through tough times is what true friendship is all about. Being a friend. If others have helped you through tough times, Mr. Conrad would suggest it probably makes sense before you graduate to walk up to those people and say thank you. It seems to me that before you graduate, with only a few days now remaining in your senior year, this might make sense that you identify the people who have been true friends for you and let them know how much you appreciate that in your life. Well, there you go. Lesson 48, a powerful story from Mr. Conrad's life. Thank you.